Welcome, everybody. My name is Krzysztof Pietroszek. I'm a professor in the School of Communication and the founding director of a new institute of immersive designs, experiences, applications, and stories. Very long name at the American University, which shortens into Institute for Ideas. So in case we wanted to change into any other field, we don't need to change the name because the name is generic enough. But it fits our agenda. And today I will be speaking about specifically, generally about artificial reality continuum, which is a continuum of technologies of VR, AR, XR, and everything which we use different terms for. But I will show you examples from our institute of work in entertainment and education. I was supposed to also show the work from health, but first of all, it's quite early, and second, it is the talk is too long. When I did a try, I went over hours, so I removed some stuff, and it's a little bit more limited than it was supposed to be. So this is about me. I consider myself a filmmaker and game designer, or game developer rather, maybe than game designer. I designed few games, but I'm also a computer scientist. And not really a robotic engineer, but this robot is easy enough for me to program. Although, as I said, 2 days ago, it attacked me, and I have a video on YouTube with a Westworld background, if you know what I mean. There is the sound from a TV series about robots attacking people. So I have a very varied mixed educational background, and that's why I'm a good fit for School of Communication, because we do interdisciplinary immersive media research. So what I mean by artificial reality continuum. There is a lot of discussion on terminology in virtual augmented reality, and people tend to speak about it, maybe not in this community necessarily, but in the community outside of immersive media. They tend to speak about it as kind of separate technologies. So AR is considered differently than VR. XR is maybe a word which connects them together, but actually there is a lot of misunderstanding and mixed up about the XR, because it also means, as extended reality, also means to augment your body with extended abilities, and that's the original meaning of this word. So there is a lot of discussions. But in 1994, Milgram and Kishino introduced this really wonderful idea or concept that artificial reality continuum, or the immersive technologies, are really a continuum and not a discrete, groups. And how they looked at it, they looked at it from a perspective of visual and auditory stimuli. So they thought about it this way. We are in our environment. This is supposed to be reality. It's still a perceptual phenomenon, but we consider it reality because that's how we live. And then we can augment this reality to a certain degree. If we just present holograms, as we call them, so AR content in front of us, then we will call it an augmented reality. If these holograms start to interact with the environment, then we will call it mixed reality, and this is a larger spectrum. We can also do something which not that many people is familiar with, which is called augmented virtuality. And this is when we actually replace the visual field with VR, as we normally would call VR, but we keep the physical objects. So for example, if I go into VR in my headset, and I see a rock in front of me, I can touch this rock because it will be mapped to a physical environment. It might be a 3D printed rock, or it might be a table in my living room, but it will be still interacting with physical reality, although it will be replaced, the visual spectrum will be replaced. And then the final augmentation, or final frontier, is the virtual reality, when everything is replaced and nothing from the reality stays in there. So this is one important note here, because thinking about these technologies as a spectrum allows you, or allowed me, to expand this into other senses other than just the sense of vision and maybe audio. So the other aspect of artificial reality continuum is that it can, and actually already does, engages all senses, not just hearing and sight. So the ultimate ultimate display, as Ivan Sutherland called it, the inventor of virtual reality, will be a technology which does not only stimulate visual sense and auditory sense, but stimulates all senses. And we are getting there very quickly, and we are soon going to be there. I will talk about it a little bit. We'll give you examples of what is already possible. I'm wondering if this audience actually, if you are familiar with all these examples, you can let me know that I will skip it a little bit if this is already for you something which you know because you are experts in this field. But there might be some surprises. So what is the state of the art of the ARC? Short state of the art. Well, first of all, the visual stimuli is really increasingly better and better. Over the last 20 years, the computer graphics are made incredible progress. A good example is Lara Croft from 1996. She consisted of 3,000 polygons, and now she's nearly unrecognizable from a real person. But that's not yet there. So we don't need only visuals, but we need the animations and the movement to be able to be convinced that this is a real person. So what is the state of animations? Here is an example of generative animations when we don't animate step by step, but we can get the animations done for us just by pointing which movement we want to do. So this is very convincing and realistic animation, but still, if you look at this avatar, you might notice something wrong with it. There is something which is imperfect, especially now when you look at the eyes, right? There is something in the eyes which makes you feel like this is not a real person. And this problem is called an uncanny valley problem. This is a term which is used in American research a lot. I'm not sure if Europe is also using it that much. So the uncanny valley problem is the idea that the closer you get into toward the realistic representation of human characters, and it includes animation and the characters themselves, the immersion increases, but at some point, when you're really close and you think you have a small gap to close, there is a valley, there is a problem, there is something which makes our perception recognize it. So for many years, people were thinking, first of all, why is that? And second, can we overcome that for virtual reality? And interestingly, we know now, we suspect, or there are hypotheses what is the reason for it. And the hypotheses are very interesting. One of them is that we are biologically or by evolution wired in such a way that we are able to recognize when people have fever and or they are sick from a distance, because it used to be, well, during pandemic, maybe it's even dangerous now, but it used to be danger for a tribe to walk around, you know, in 20,000 years ago and meet somebody who was sick, because then everybody would die. So this recognition, this ability to recognize that somebody is sick is probably the cause of uncanny valley of realistic characters. So we have to make these characters so good that they don't look sick, that they don't look strange. And many people argue that it's not possible. But interestingly, there is so much progress recently that I believe already I'm convinced that it's possible. And just to convince you, in case you don't know this movie, this is Rachel from Blade Runner 2039. But the interesting thing about Rachel is that she doesn't exist. She was an actress in 1983, and she's now, first of all, she's over 50 and or even older. And second, she has some personal problems and she couldn't play in this film, even if she would be made by makeup to look younger. So she was completely digitalized and almost nobody noticed. If you really pay attention, you might be able to notice that this is not a real actress, but it's actually, I do these experiments on my film students and 50% is able to guess it, probably because I'm asking them the question, even if I try to deceive them about it. But 50% doesn't believe that this is an artificial character. So maybe we are crossing the uncanny valley. And if this is not yet convincing enough, this is another example of two people which none of you, I'm sure, knows because they don't exist. These are people created by generative adversarial neural networks. And you can go to the website called thispersondoesnotexist.com, and you will see that the computer will generate immediately, just at the refresh, will generate a realistic character for you. Of course, this is just a photo, but I think it will take around 5 years from now or less to have these characters be used in movies as actors. In fact, we are working on projects like this. We're not that good. We're not at this level, but we are a small institute. So I think Hollywood, if they wanted to do it, and they will probably do it, it's a question of time when we have a completely realistic, indistinguishable characters which are completely artificial. So the uncanny valley is going to be crossed. Of course, in VR, we don't necessarily have to create the avatars artificially through computer graphics. We can use cameras, but there is also interesting in development in this aspect. Everybody is probably familiar with VR cameras, which are just 360 cameras allowing you to film around. The problem with them is that they suffer from something called the immersion paradox. When you are in VR film, you look around, and initially you're very immersed. People like to travel this way. They like to go to beautiful places this way. But when you start to move, you notice that the movement does not cause the movement of your head or your walking does not cause the movement inside the film, inside the recording. And that causes the opposite effect of immersion. It takes you out of immersion. It breaks the suspension of disbelief. So these cameras are really step towards creating realistic virtual realities, but they are not the ultimate goal. So to address this issue, there is an experimental camera developed by Facebook called Mindful. And this camera allows you to actually look around after the recording, but you cannot walk, you can just look around. So if I use the camera here, I would be able to look under the table. I will be able to look behind my laptop a little bit, but not walk around. So this is like a step further. And then finally, the thing which I'm most interested in and fascinated with is volumetric capture. The idea that you can record people and objects in such a way that they are really explorable during the viewing. So you can walk around them, you can come close to them, go away from them. This is called volumetric capture in film, and this already exists as a technology. It's quite expensive, but there are some new developments, including our lab, which makes it cheaper and not that good quality, but accessible, I would say. And my students learned that. So this is the example here, how we capture volumetric capture scenes. This is a film I was working on called Vera. It's a period piece. And basically what you do, you have a 360 green screen. Actually, it's not even needed anymore, but it's better quality. And then you use multiple cameras. These cameras record not only the actual video, but also the position of pixel in 3D space. So you get the position of the pixel, like you can see here on the left a little bit. And then you combine these images from different cameras into a single hologram so that you can then present it in across the augmented artificial reality continuum, from augmented reality to virtual reality, and walk around. So this is really a realization of a holodeck idea from Star Trek, the idea that you can be inside the film. So this is the film Vera. This can be used also in museums, and it can be also done for objects. So here is a project we were working on for a museum of Peace Corps experiences. And here, this is an alpargatas sandal from Colombia, which we digitalized by doing photogrammetry of it. And then we present it as a hologram in front of the viewer. You can also statically scan people like here. So you don't need to record the hologram of people, but you can scan them. This is a low quality hologram of myself. And then you can give it to students or other people to play with and have some fun. Although this is not perfect, right? Because there is no face expressions and so on. This was, I think, a revenge from one of my students. I gave them a better grade, and that they sent me a video when I'm dancing a twist. So the other aspect is the auditory stimuli, and it's often not deeply thought about except for specialists, while in fact it is essential and creates a 50% of immersion. So one of the most important things here is that the audio has to be spatialized. It has to be done in such a way that it is being computed while we are experiencing VR, especially in volumetric capture. And what I mean by that, it's not a trivial problem. So, for example, if we have, if we place a microphone somewhere in a specific place, and then we walk inside the film, the recording was done in this specific place, in the same sense as the recording of camera would be done from a specific place. So that takes us out of immersion because I can come close to the character and I still hear the character at the distance, right? That's not good. Even worse is that I can walk around some objects and then even though I will hear them from the kind of the direction, I will not have something called perspective, which is basically a feeling of distance to the sound. So to address that, we have something called sound spatializers, which is a recording of sound in such a way that while we are listening, the audio will be mixed in real time so that we can hear it from specific places. It does not matter that much for 360 video. I mean, it does, but it is simpler. But for volumetric films, for holodeck experiences, it is absolutely essential. So this is one aspect. Another aspect is that we would like to have artificial sound. And as I will show you one of the examples of artificial intelligence actors, which we are working on, it would be great if these actors had non-robotic voices, where if they didn't speak in such a way that you can immediately say this is a robot, but they would actually, given that they will be crossing the Uncanny Valley, they would have the emotional voices. They could act on the voice and not only on the face and expression. So this is slowly becoming possible. The WaveNet combined with a motional engine gives us some abilities to create sound voices for actors and for avatars which are realistic and full of emotion. And this is just a quick show. Let me know if you hear it, because this is actually an audio.
Good morning, Ryan. I am so sorry.
You see that Ryan, the robot says, "Good morning, Ryan. I am so sorry," and there is the emotion in it, as opposed to "Good morning, Ryan. I am so sorry," right? Or even neutral, non-robotic voice. So once we have all these technologies, we need to display it on something, and these very familiar devices are only able to display audio and video. They don't do other senses. We think about it like a natural because other media are audiovisual, but our artificial reality continuum is not audiovisual. It should encompass all senses. But let's focus on problems with the audiovisual, on the current state and a little bit of the future. So the biggest problem in VR is another kind of paradox, is that it is all-encompassing. We can look around, and yet when we put on headset, we actually can look around in very narrow field of view, right? So there are new solutions for that. This is a Pimax Chinese headset, which has 200 degrees. I don't know if anybody tried it. I tried it. We have it in the lab, and it's pretty good, but it's still not yet there. We still need to have a little bit better quality, even though it's very wide lens. It has some distortion on the sides. So few more years, and we will have it, or few more, maybe not that many years. But what is waiting for us in the future is even more interesting and scary to a degree. For example, there is a development of contact lenses, glasses obviously, but contact lenses which will present virtual and augmented reality. Right now, they already exist, but they have only 8 pixels resolution. So that's not enough, of course. It has to be a few million pixels. It's a question of a few years to get there. But interestingly enough, there is already development in other senses. For example, we can do gustatory stimuli. And by that, I don't mean something which is entirely artificial in a sense that it doesn't work. There is, for example, a project, Digital Lollipop by Nimesh Ranashikhe. What he did, he created a little device which you can put on your teeth. Here, the device is a little bit bigger, but it could be miniaturized. And it can create sweet taste and sour taste very well, and some other tastes to a degree. And it's, of course, programmable over Wi-Fi, right? So you can imagine connecting it to your VR headset and playing with it this way. Of course, another important aspect is the tactile and haptic stimuli, and the progress there is great, and at the same time, it will take probably the longest of all senses to get it right. Not sure if you're familiar with this device. This is called HubX. It's a glove which gives you a very, very high fidelity tactile feelings. It basically allows you to, if you put it on, you can grab grains of coffee and grab something or hold something, and you will feel that it is there. So it has a force feedback. It can create the delicate feelings of touching touching some skin. So it's very, very high quality, but it's first of all very expensive, and as you can see, very bulky. It comes with a huge computer connected to that, and it's only for your head. So this looks like a step toward haptic feedback or haptic stimuli, but it's not yet there. But this is another interesting one. This is more feasible, I think, for wider applications. Something called Tesla suit. It's an experimental suit where it's a full body suit and you get haptic feedback on the whole body. Here, the example is a little bit scary because they are Ukrainians. I think these guys are very, you know, they do like, they have a very specific application in head for it, like as you will see, which is first-person shooters. So this guy is basically going to shoot the other guy without touching him. Yeah, so this is scary because it can create real pain, but it also can create less severe feelings, right? So this is designed for gaming more than other applications, but it's a step toward full body haptic stimuli. And finally, not finally, actually, there's one more, but this one is the old promise of Smellorama. If anybody is familiar with it, in 1970s, there was the idea that cinema should have smell. It completely failed. So this is the attempt number 2. The mask which creates, which you can program to create smells for your VR experiences. And this is, by the way, only a prototype. It's not really available. I'm not sure if this company will make it because they are promising to deliver it for like 2 years already to our lab and still didn't happen. So maybe they don't have enough funding. But the idea is quite simple. You basically have a bunch of perfumes of different smells, and you release them in a programmable way, creating new smells. And what it can create is a smell of fire, smell of ocean, breeze of flowers in the spring. So it can have some interesting applications. Another interesting stimuli, which we often forget about, is the vestibular stimulation. And this is the feeling of motion, the sense of motion. It's important because this is one of the main causes why many people have motion sickness in VR. So motion sickness is caused, not in everybody, but in many people, by the fact that our visual stimuli is moving. For example, we are on a roller coaster in VR, but our body is not moving. And then the brain is confused and sends the signal of what is going on? I see movement, I'm not moving. So this can be solved by stimulating our movement sense, which is the vestibular sense, which is basically a balance system under our ear plus some parts of brain. And by slightly electrocuting your balance system safely, this is safe because it's a little bit of electricity, you can actually create a feeling that you are really moving. You will not be able to distinguish it from not moving. Of course, as all these technologies, this one has a scary elements too. My friend at MIT, Misha Sra, tried to use it in a very specific way. She basically created a project called Human Robot, where she has a remote control and the person has these two stimuli here, and she can make them walk because she basically creates the balance. They have to step forward, and she can literally control a person. So that's funny in this case, but it's scary if it was developed by let's say, some government agencies. So this is the state of the ARC, state of the artificial reality continuum technologies. Probably there is some newer updates happening every day. I'm not that up to date with everything what is happening, but this is up to date maybe 6 months ago. But the most important thing here is that I think these technologies are just technologies, but what they really do, they create a new, entirely new medium that is not just extension of cinema. Some people think about 360 video, like 3D movies were, and not even very good one. But it is a new medium which combines live theater and cinema plus gaming and interactivity into something which we don't really know how to use, how to tell stories in, and how to educate with. Of course, there's a lot of projects, everybody experiment with them, but that doesn't mean that the technology and its applications is mature enough to understand the consequences, whether this is working. So it's a very interesting time to be in. So one thing which I wanted to specifically talk about is the storytelling aspect, because I'm a film professor. So one of the most significant or fundamental changes in storytelling provided by virtual reality or artificial reality continuum is the change of the frame into a sphere. That sounds like almost mathematical description, but it is not. If you are interested in media theories, you know the importance of frame. The frame is the way the director, the creator, passes the information in the most generic way, emotional content, the narration itself toward the viewer. And this, the control over frame is essential. The whole language of cinema, the whole language of editing and cinematography is based on the fact that we can manipulate these frames. And we lose that ability when we are creating 360 videos. So the initial fascination with 360 video was somewhat faded when people realized that this language does not apply, and there is not necessarily yet, or maybe ever, a language which would be easily replaceable. What I think about it is that it is more like a theater. The 360 video is more like a theater than traditional cinema, because even though you can participate, you can interact, which you can't in a traditional cinema, you are stuck to your sphere. You cannot, the director cannot take you out and to a degree, as we will discuss a little bit, but it cannot control you as much as it can in a traditional film. So the other aspect of it is that there is a big difference between 360 video and the volumetric film, because in 360 video, you're not only stuck with the sphere, but you're stuck inside the same sphere all the time throughout the experience. The sphere might move, you might have different takes, but it's not moving with you. So it is static. In volumetric film, as opposed to that, we are moving with that sphere. Our head becomes that sphere. So it is very close to reality, or very close to participatory theater. So as I said, conventional cinematic language does not work at all. And to experiment with this, what does it mean it does not work, and what can we do with it? We created a transmedia experiment where we tried to do the same story, a short story by Catherine Mansfield, in 5 different ways. The first way was a conventional film, which we have. Second one is 360 video. This is also, I would say, conventional, because it's just the story as if watched from in a theater. The third one is very interesting aspect. It's not completely done. It will be done in a month maybe, but it is telling this story as a kind of dollhouse miniature on a table. So you see it on the table, the story happens on a table, there is a miniature of the set, and you walk around it. This is kind of a tradition of first cinemas, when you had to like look through the small glasses into, I forgot the name of this technology, but you had to like look inside and there was some movement. So now you have to have glasses on your, or you can use the smartphone, but with glasses is much better. And you're looking at this story happening in front of you. Another one is interactive VR installation, where you basically walk around inside the film. And we also did a podcast, and the original story is provided in this installation as a text. So we have all this media to compare how the story is being, how the story should be told and how the story is understood or reflected upon by the viewers. So I will not play the whole thing because it is a little bit long. I just wanted to show you the small fragment to just indicate for those who are not filmmakers how rich the cinematic language is and how difficult it is to translate it to 360. So we have a short scene here. As you can see, this is a medium close-up, or close-up actually in this case, over the shoulder with, we are switching the camera between the two viewers. And then we can do different things. We can, for example, move the camera, we can pan with the camera.
Is all that we imagined.
We can zoom onto or dolly into the character. So all these cinematic elements are very important and they are otherwise not available in 360 video. This is a recording of 360 video. And the movement of the viewer is the movement of head. So the viewer is free to look anywhere. It is like being in a theater, it's very immersive, but at the same time, we might lose the viewer because the emotional moments are not closed on. The viewer might look around because something happened and miss something. So it's very, very different. It's really similar to theater rather than to traditional film. Another one is the interactive installation. When you walk around in the reconstructed set, which we did with photogrammetry, you can experience all these versions of the film, but you can actually become one of the actors and solve a little puzzle, which is like a gamification of the film. And then there are these other versions which we don't yet have. So just to compare what is happening here, in conventional film, for example, we have a shot size, right? This is the very important thing, like close-up or an establishing shot. In 360 film, we can replace it with blocking, which is the term we use to decide how the actors are walking around. So we can say, okay, I can't make a close-up for you, but you could come with this actor, or we can come as an actor closer to camera, not too close because it has the effect of gigantism, but to, let's say, a medium close-up. And this way, by movement inside the film, I can create this emotional effect. But it only works to a limited degree. And in a volumetric film, we actually don't have anything because we allow the viewer to walk around. So the viewer might leave the set, theoretically, right? If we can, if we create a big enough set, the viewer could leave the film and go somewhere else to watch another episode of that film happening somewhere else, right? So this is very, very different storytelling. The same happens with camera angles. We can't have the camera angles like in traditional cinema. If you put camera up, then you are overpowering the character. If you put camera down, then the character has power over the viewer, right? These are the basics of camera angles. We can't achieve that in 360 film. When we put the camera low to achieve the effect of being overpowered, it actually has the effect of making us feel that we are children. If we start to move the camera, then there is a very interesting psychological effect. If we move the camera backwards, then the viewer will look back. They will not feel that they are moving away from the scene. They will immediately look back. And it is called, oh, I forgot the psychology name, but it is a reflex which is supposed to protect us from danger, because if we are moving backwards, then we might fall, right? So we are unable to stop ourselves. We would really need to control ourselves not to do that. And this is being used creatively in films by National Geographic, for example. There is a scene underwater when some sharks are around and the camera starts moving backwards, and then you immediately look around and there is a huge shark coming at you. So this is being used, but it is a limitation of the technology which is used for the storytelling. Then in montage, we also have huge differences and problems. The essential thing in filmmaking, which is the cut, which makes it possible to make a 100,000 years long movie into a 1.5 hour movie, like in Odyssey, 2001, or in any other film, the cut compresses time, but you can't cut in 360 film or volumetric film. If you do that, then what will happen is the viewer becomes disoriented. In 360 film, it's okay if the cut is long enough, if it's 30 seconds, But in volumetric film, if you cut, the person's completely disoriented. They were walking around and suddenly you cut somewhere else. They're like, what happened? So it takes them out of immersion. So we don't have it. And how can we replace it? Well, we can use fading out in 360 to a degree. And in volumetric, we can allow the viewer to teleport themselves. But it's hard to convince the viewer that they are in a 1917 bar, like in my film, and yet they can teleport. So to summarize this, the conventional film is passive participation and relies on suspension of disbelief. 360 film is also passive participation, but relies on immersion because the suspension of disbelief doesn't really work there. It's more about how much you can be immersed. And there is a difference between these terms. And the volumetric film is definitely interactive, even if the interaction is not enabled. Even when you don't talk to the actors or grab objects, it is interactive in a sense that you are interacting with the material by creating your own version of a story, as if you were the editor of the film. So in this sense, traditional cinema is very different from 360 film, which is more like a live theater, and it's entirely different from volumetric film, which cannot be really compared to anything. The only thing which comes to mind is the participatory theater, like the theater of the poor in South America, where the audience and the actors are playing together. But other than that, it's really entirely unique. But it makes it very fascinating to be in this field because it's like being at the beginnings of the 20th century, during the Lumiere's or end of 19th century, during the Lumiere brothers' time, when they didn't know how to make movies, and they invented everything, and now we admire that, even if it's funny and simple. And we need Kuleshovs and Eisensteins and other theoreticians of cinema to invent that the way we can tell the stories. So this is the cinematic aspect, the storytelling aspect. But there is an interesting connection with upcoming technologies, which is that the artificial reality continuum and artificial intelligence work together to create a form of reality. It's even difficult to say what it is if it's still a medium. And just to give you an example, that I know that many people think about it as if it was a game, but just to give you an example, it can be more than that. We created a project called Reactive, which is an idea that we train an artificial intelligence to create soliloquy of Hamlet. So you can see the level of this actor right now. It's not very good yet, but it's funny. At least it makes it fun. So here's the artificial intelligence actor playing Hamlet, directed by me.
Okay, Adam, listen. Today we are going to work on the famous monologue by Shakespeare from Hamlet. For now, let's just do a dry run of this scene. Action.
To be or not to be? That is the question. But it is nobler in the mind to suffer the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune.
Stop. Okay, so that was fine, but now I would like you to interpret this text, add some movement, create choreography. Let's see what you can do. Action.
So the actor is now inventing the movement.
To be or not to be? That is the question. But it is nobler in the mind to suffer the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune.
Okay, stop. Honestly, it looked like you were scared, and the text is about being sad, making a very difficult decision. So let me show you, or maybe let's ask John to show you the movement, the choreography I imagined for this scene, and then we'll come back to this work, okay?
Adam, learn the movement from me.
So this is one of the students who is basically wearing a motion suit, and he will be showing the actor how to perform choreography for this scene. Over time, the actor would learn that this is a better version of choreography, but this is just right now a mapping of the choreography into the actor's mind to do that. And it's very shaky, sorry, because it is recorded
so now
from the
the
headset.
movement, and I would like to see your final interpretation. Let's actually switch on the decoration. And yeah, this reflector doesn't really work. So switch on the set lighting and spotlight off. Okay, let's see. Action.
To be or not to be? That is the question. Whether 'tis nobler in the mind to suffer the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune, or to take arms against a sea of troubles and by opposing.
Stop. That was pretty good. Okay, let's finish for today.
So this is a project which is still funny. It's not supposed to be funny, right? It's a Hamlet soliloquy, but it is funny, and I like it because of that. But one day, these actors will be as good as real actors, I believe. So the actors should be scared, because once Hollywood gets their hand on artificial actors, I don't know if there will be real actors having any jobs. Another projects which we also work in the Institute for Ideas is the museum exhibits, which are AR. But this one is particularly interesting because typically when you have a museum exhibits like that, you basically see a hologram of something, right? So you walk around and you might have your magic window through a tablet or phone, or maybe glasses to see the exponents. But here what we did, we created little holograms of Peace Corps museum, Peace Corps volunteers which traveled to the world. Peace Corps is like an organization which travels to different parts of the world when they are young. And we created holograms of them using volumetric capture, so you can see the quality of volumetric capture. And we created holograms of objects they brought with themselves. And these objects are interactive. So for example, there's a carpet. If I touch this carpet, it will react to my hand. So this made actually a difference. This was considered interesting by users, more interesting than static holograms. And this is a tool set which people can use to do. So it's not just a project, but there's a tool set behind it. We use photogrammetry, volumetric capture, then you load it into this app, and it creates a mixed reality experience. I already showed this fragment. This is how we recreate the objects themselves by making a lot of photographs around. Then we record the holograms of the Peace Corps volunteers, or it could be a guide in the museum. The holograms are interactive. We can touch them. We didn't know what to do with alpargatas, so basically that was the idea that we just rotate it, but maybe we should bend it. So, and not only the museums can be made more interactive, but they can be made more fun, like in this example, when we took the royal game of Ur, which is a very, very old game played by Sargon of Akkad in Assyrian Empire, 2600 BC. It's one of the first games, actually, I think older than chess, from the same region, but older than chess. It's similar to backgammon a little bit. And the rules of this game were recently discovered in a cuneiform tablets. So we implemented that game, but we made it fun for children, or maybe not children, for at least teenagers, because you basically visit the tombs of Ur and play a game against the Sargon of Akkad. So yeah, I don't have the video for it because it's very long, but you can see it on our website. So museums, storytelling, traditional cinema, all these kind of experiences can be created with ARC. But one of the aspects of ARC which I'm really fascinated with is education. And I know that many of the talks were about education and ARC, or VR in general, or XR. But this particular project, I think, is a little bit different, and I wanted to just show it because I think it has interesting aspects, especially during the pandemic. So what we did here is that we have a local instructor, the guy on the bottom of the screen, who is in class teaching a regular class. There might be few people. Let's say there is a limited number of students in the class. But he wants to interact with other students. And these other students can be staying at their homes and connecting, for example, through Zoom, right? Like normally people would connect through Zoom. The problem is that this is not really the same level of interaction, right? Like if I have some people over Zoom and some people in person, many teachers, and I have this problem too, many teachers will tend to pay more attention to people who are in person, because we see their face expressions, their body movement, right? So the body language. So there will be like more interaction and better quality outcomes. So in this project, what we did is that we represent the remote student who stays at home as a hologram, or rather an avatar, which is presented on a whiteboard. So you can interact with this avatar just through the whiteboard. You don't need any equipment inside the in the classroom. The student himself has to be has to have a VR, and they see an avatar of our teacher. And again, teacher doesn't need to have any equipment in the class. The avatar is created automatically for him, and it's voice driven, right? So the only thing we are sending is voice, which means that the low quality connections, internet connection, will work. So the teacher is asking to the student who is remote in the left upper corner to write something on a whiteboard. The student is writing it on a virtual whiteboard using her finger, and the avatar of that student is writing it on the physical whiteboard in the class. So this whiteboard becomes a surface which allows for interaction between reality and virtual reality. And this is an equation for a Fitts law, and there is a mistake. So then the teacher actually can say that, oh, this is a mistake, and the student will see that. Of course, this is not very high quality avatars and so on, because this is just an experiment. But imagine that this was good quality and it was easily deployable. That would allow people to remotely participate in classes to which they cannot come for some reason. So that's the projects I wanted to show you. But just at the end, I wanted to remind everybody about this amazing essay written by Ivan Sutherland in 1968. This is just amazing that he did that so long ago, and it's so relevant today. And ultimate display would, of course, be a room within which the computer will control the existence of matter. So the idea is that we are actually creating a reality. And this was in 1968, the person who invented the virtual reality, other than Tom Furness, who did it for military, but this guy did it not for military, is saying back then that we will one day have technologies which will simulate our senses. But he was also giving us warnings. A chair displayed in such a room would be good enough to sit in. That's the haptic feedback, and we slowly already have it. A handcuffs displayed in such a room would be confining, and that's a little bit worrying, and a bullet would be fatal. Such a display could literally be the wonderland into which Alice walked. And as you know, Alice in Wonderland is not a story which is just happy. It's a story which is fascinating, but it has the element of scare in it. And that I wanted to finish at this note, that the technologies are fascinating, the projects are great, but we have to be very careful because they can take us into very dangerous territory. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Krzysztof. Thank you so much. Hi, Jean-Philippe.
Yeah.
It was an outstanding presentation. So he told us about a lot of tricks on cinema. I think I will move. I will switch to cinema now. Am I welcome, Krzysztof?
Yeah, thank you very much. Yes, of course you are welcome. You can visit us in Washington and do some films in Institute.
Oh, okay. So we have a comment from Virginie. Please, Virginie, you can.
I don't see questions here.
Oh.
Oh, this is in the chat. Okay, I see. Because I said, okay, there's another one.
No, I just wanted to do a connection with, I am back because I was out, and the connection with artificial intelligences. That in fact, now with Avatar, you can mix a human avatar and artificial intelligence avatar in the same room, you see? And for learning, I think it could be very interesting subject to observe, to do observation.
Yeah. One idea we had for that was, what if we had an avatar which sometimes was inhabited by human and sometimes by AI? And the question would be, to what degree you would need to inhabit an avatar for people to believe that you are a human? So how often you can leave? So you're in a boring meeting, right? And let's say, and then you leave the AI to answer yes, and then you just connect at times. Or it can be used for other purposes, but just interesting. There is this thing called Turing test, right? Which basically tests whether the computer is indistinguishable from human. But that would be like a blurred Turing test.
Yeah.
You have a comment from Mohammed on the chat also.
Yeah, it's coming. It's smell and gustatory stimuli is really early, but it's coming, and it will come soon. It's only a question of market. If there was enough interest, then people would already sell it. The startups would grow quickly. But I think it's interesting. You can go to restaurant. You know, nowadays in the pandemic, it will be such a great technology to have. We wouldn't be so worried that we're sitting at home. So.